Imagine this. You're strolling through a peaceful garden, enjoying the fresh air, when suddenly a spider drops down from nowhere and lands on you. Your first reaction would surely be to jump in shock, frantically trying to brush it off. But strangely, the spider seems determined to cling to you, no matter where you go. Maybe it's simply because its silk thread got caught on your clothes. But then again, what if it's actually toying with you? The fascinating thing is that, despite having tiny brains, spiders possess intelligence far beyond what most people imagine. Many assume that only animals with large brains are capable of complex behavior, yet spiders challenge that notion. The clearest example is the jumping spider. Also known as Portia, a strong contender for the title of tiny genius in the natural world. According to Dr. Dimitrov, an evolutionary biologist from the University Museum of Bergen, Norway, this spider can play mind games that few other small creatures are capable of. Unlike web-building spiders that passively wait for prey to get trapped, the Portia is an active hunter. What makes it even more remarkable is that its chosen prey is often other spiders. A renowned researcher on jumping spiders, Dr. Robert Jackson from the University of Canterbury, New Zealand, once described how Portia doesn't just hunt, it adapts, changing its strategies depending on the type of prey. For example, when hunting Stegotophus spiders, which usually nest inside curled dry leaves, Portia disguises itself as one of them. It shakes the leaf nest in a special rhythm, almost like knocking with a secret password. The spider inside mistakes it for a friendly visitor and comes out to greet it tonely, to fall straight into Portia's ambush. When targeting web-building spiders, the strategy changes again. If the opponent is smaller, Portia boldly ventures into the web, pretending to be a trapped insect. It wriggles weakly, mimicking a struggling bug. The web owner rushes over, expecting an easy meal only to find itself being attacked and killed by Portia. But when the prey is larger and more dangerous, Portia becomes far more cautious. Sitting at the web's edge, it gently plucks the silk, imitating the faint vibrations of a harmless insect. When the host spider approaches to investigate, Portia strikes with venomous fangs. In many experiments, scientists observed Portia testing different vibration patterns until it discovered the one most effective at tricking its opponent. That's not all. One of Portia's most impressive abilities is its capacity to plan routes, something rare among insects. Typically, it spots prey from a distance using its highly developed vision. It carefully observes and then chooses the most advantageous path of attack. Dr. Jackson once witnessed a Portia preparing to hunt an orb weaver spider. When the orb weaver detected the intruder, it shook its entire web violently as a warning. Any direct approach would have flung Portia away. But instead of giving up, Portia circled around a nearby tree, climbed up, and descended on silk from above, catching the orb weaver off guard. The clever maneuver left the prey with almost no chance to fight back. To test this planning ability, researchers designed a special experiment. They placed Portia on a tower where it could see two boxes, one containing prey, the other filled with harmless leaves. The path to the prey box had two options, a shorter but incorrect route and a longer but correct one. Most insects, like ants, would instinctively take the shorter path and fail. But Portia was different. After observing carefully, most chose the correct path on their very first try, and though it was longer. This demonstrated that inside its tiny brain lies a surprisingly sophisticated form of cognition. Even more astonishing, Portia can perform basic counting. In a variation of the experiment, after choosing the path to the prey box, researchers secretly changed the number of prey inside. If Portia had originally seen one prey item, but later found two or three, it often hesitated or abandoned the hunt. The same happened if the number was reduced. This revealed that Portia could remember and compare numbers from 1 to 3, a numerical sense comparable to that of a 1-year-old human child. This discovery is remarkable. Since counting has long been considered unique to mammals and birds, certainly not something expected from a spider smaller than a fingernail. Beyond hunting, Portia's intelligence also helps it survive. Despite being a predator, it constantly faces threats from birds, lizards, wasps, and even larger spiders. Once again, it uses clever thinking as its weapon. In another study, Dr. Fiona Cross from the University of Canterbury found that Portia chooses the least risky escape routes when faced with danger. In one experiment, Portia was placed on a tiny island surrounded by water something spiders dislike. 4 wooden bridges led away from the island. Most Portia chose the shortest path, minimizing the jumps needed over water. But intriguingly, some chose the longest route only to suddenly shorten it by leaping diagonally across multiple points. In other words, they weren't just choosing paths, they were inventing shortcuts. Behaviors like these continue to astonish scientists. With a brain smaller than a sesame seed, Portia can solve problems, plan ahead, evaluate risks, and even count. Clearly, this is no ordinary spider. This is nature's tiny genius. You might be wondering, how could such a tiny creature with a brain no bigger than a grain of sand manage to do things that seem to require higher intelligence? To answer this, many scientists have spent decades studying the jumping spider Portia. And the deeper they look, the more surprising the findings become. One of the traits that makes Portia truly unique is its ability to break the rules. Most insects live purely by instinct. Their behavior is fixed, repetitive, and very hard to change. But Portia is different. It can adapt its strategy to each specific situation. When faced with an unfamiliar web, Portia doesn't immediately charge in. Instead, it takes time to observe, experimenting with different vibrations on the silk threads. If the first rhythm doesn't work, it tries another, and another until it successfully deceives the web's owner. This might sound simple, but in reality it demonstrates deliberate trial-and-error learning. Many researchers describe Portia as a tiny scientist, patiently running experiments until it finds the winning formula. And Portia's cleverness isn't limited to hunting. It also has escape strategies that can catch its enemies off guard. The natural world is full of danger, and to survive, Portia has to be inventive. When threatened, it can play dead, drop suddenly on a silk line to make a quick escape, or hide in tiny leaf crevices where predators can't reach. Another fascinating study showed that Portia can even evaluate risks before acting. Scientists placed them in an environment with several escape routes, each with different levels of danger. Most Portias chose the safest, least risky path. This is the kind of behavior that science once thought only higher animals could display. But the story of Portia's intelligence doesn't end there. In another experiment, after Portia had already planned its route toward prey, researchers suddenly changed the prey's position or number. Instead of blindly continuing, Portia stopped, reassessed the entire situation, and then made a new decision. This proves that its actions aren't just hardwired instincts. It can actually reprocess information in its brain to adapt to new circumstances. To put this in human terms, imagine you're heading to a restaurant, only to find it closed when you arrive. You wouldn't just stand there, you'd quickly look for another place to eat. That's exactly how Portia processes information. A clear sign of flexible cognition. Another remarkable trait is Portia's basic counting ability, which I mentioned earlier. You might think, counting to 3 isn't that impressive. But when you remember that Portia's brain is the size of a sesame seed, it becomes astonishing. Researchers call this ability subitizing, recognizing small quantities without counting one by one. This skill helps Portia gauge both prey opportunities and the risks of facing other spiders. For example, if Portia sees just one spider in a web, it will confidently attack. But if there are 2 or 3, it becomes much more cautious, sometimes even abandoning the hunt to avoid danger. This careful calculation is what has allowed the species to survive and thrive in such a hostile world. Even more impressive, Portia can remember and mentally map its surroundings. In the observation tower experiment I described earlier, when Portia spotted a prey box, it didn't just move instinctively. It created a mental map. Later, when placed in a position where the prey was no longer visible, Portia still followed the memorized path with precision. This shows short-term spatial memory, something usually reserved for far more complex animals. Researcher Fiona Cross once described it like this: Portia seems to think before it acts. It stands still, observes, and only then makes a move. Sometimes it spends minutes just contemplating its next route. This has led many scientists to rethink the idea that intelligence is tied to brain size. Instead, it seems to depend on how the brain is structured and how efficiently it operates. Looking across the animal kingdom, Portia isn't the only species that challenges the big brain equals smart belief. crows, octopuses, and even some ants have shown remarkable problem-solving skills. But Portia stands out because it's so tiny. So tiny that it seems almost impossible that such a small brain could contain a complex hunting strategy. For this reason, Portia has become a favorite subject in laboratories worldwide. Researchers just want to know how smart these spiders are. They also want to understand how such a tiny brain evolved to be so capable. One hypothesis suggests that because Portia specializes in hunting other spiders, prey that are dangerous and unpredictable over time, it had to develop advanced planning and problem-solving abilities to survive. In other words, the harsh pressures of survival may have trained Portia into becoming a master strategist. If you observe Portia in the wild, you'll notice behaviors that feel almost human. It can wait patiently for hours, just for the perfect moment, try a different tactic after failure, and even invent new approaches on the spot. This is why many call it affectionately the tiny strategist. But along with admiration, there's also a touch of eeriness. Imagine a creature so small, yet capable of planning, deception, and tactical thinking. If something this tiny can show such intelligence, what other small beings in nature might be hiding similar abilities we've overlooked? Perhaps it is this very mystery that makes Portia so captivating. Not only for scientists, but also for anyone fascinated by the hidden wonders of nature. Each new study on Portia opens another door, reminding us that intelligence is not defined by body size. Sometimes the most extraordinary things come from the smallest of creatures. We've already talked a lot about the hunting skills, planning, and even strategic thinking of the jumping spider Portia. In this part, let's dive deeper into how that intelligence is expressed in their daily lives. Because to survive in a dangerous world, being smart isn't just about hunting, it's also about escaping life-and-death situations. First, let's talk about escape skills. Most spiders, when attacked, only have a few options: run, hide, or fight back. But Portia is far more flexible. It can play dead, lying motionless for several minutes to trick predators. It can suddenly drop on a silk thread, disappearing from sight in an instant. And sometimes Portia chooses to squeeze into extremely tight spaces, using its small size as an advantage to evade danger. In an experiment designed at the University of Canterbury, researchers placed Portia in a large water tank situation it absolutely hates. Spiders in general dislike water, and falling in can easily mean drowning. The researchers set up for narrow wooden bridges floating on the surface, creating possible escape routes. Most Portias chose the shortest path with the fewest jumps, minimizing the risk of falling into the water. But interestingly, some took the longer path only to suddenly shorten it by leaping diagonally, skipping multiple steps at once. This shows that Portia doesn't simply act on instinct, it truly observes, calculates, and makes creative decisions. In other words, it can evaluate the situation and choose the optimal solution, even when it goes against the obvious initial choice. Researcher Fiona Cross once commented, "These spiders don't act rashly. They often pause, carefully observe, and then jump. That behavior makes them seem as if they are thinking. And this is exactly what makes Portia stand out's its ability to delay action in order to analyze the situation. Something rarely seen in such tiny creatures. Another piece of evidence proving that Portia doesn't just rely on instinct is how it reacts when situations suddenly change. In experiments where the number or position of prey was altered, Portia didn't blindly follow its old plan. Instead, it stopped, reassessed, and adjusted its strategy. It shows that even with a brain smaller than a sesame seed, it can update information and change course remarkably similar to human flexible thinking. In this intelligence is no luxury, it's survival. In the real world, Portia faces countless enemies: birds, lizards, frogs, wasps, and even larger spiders. That's why its ability to assess risks and decide whether to advance or retreat is crucial. Think about it. If Portia recklessly attacked every web it came across, it would have gone extinct long ago. Instead, it carefully selects its targets, experiments with tactics. Experiments simply walks away if the danger is too great. Another trait that impresses scientists is Portia's patience. While many small predators strike quickly, Portia can wait for hours, holding back until the perfect moment to attack. Sometimes it spends long periods testing different web vibrations, almost like typing in a code on another spider's web. Patience, combined with calculation, makes Portia a true master hunter. On top of that, studies show that Portia has exceptional vision. Its large front eyes allow it to see details and track movement from a relatively long distance. This is a huge advantage not only for spotting prey, but also for navigating its environment, memorizing spaces, and choosing the right paths. Some scientists even describe Portia's eyes as mini binoculars, essential tools for a strategic predator. Interestingly, it's these very behaviors that have made Portia something of a star in the animal behavior research community. Laboratories around the world, from New Zealand to Europe to Asia, have all conducted experiments to understand how its tiny brain operates. And the more they study, the more they conclude. Intelligence ISNT about brain size, it S about how the brain is organized. Indeed, Portia teaches us a powerful lesson. In nature, even the smallest creatures can have surprisingly complex abilities. It challenges the old belief that bigger brains mean higher intelligence. Instead, Portia proves that no matter how small you are, if you use what you have effectively, you can still become a dominant force in your world. And from here, scientists began to ask bigger questions. If a tiny spider like Portia can calculate, remember, plan, and even count, how many other species out there might also possess hidden intelligence we've never discovered? Could it be that we are underestimating the diversity and complexity of minds in nature? Looking back, it's perhaps this very mystery that makes Portia so fascinating. It is both a small spider and a living testament that intelligence isn't bound by size. Each new study about Portia feels like a revelation, forcing us to rethink the way we see the animal kingdom. In conclusion, the jumping spider Portia is not just an intelligent spider. It is a symbol of creativity, patience, and adaptability in the natural world. A brain smaller than a sesame seed, yet capable of strategy, flexibility, and remarkable survival. So what about you? After hearing about Portia the tiny genius, among spiders, are you surprised to learn that intelligence doesn't always come with size? Share your thoughts in the comments, because your perspective might just open a new window into the wonders of nature.